A role-playing game happens invisibly. In order for a player to see, smell, touch, or feel anything that's going on in your game, or to feel any emotion in the story, it has to be described by you. That makes describing things the game master's single most important skill. So today we're going to be talking about some tips and techniques to help you do it perfectly. Hey everyone, you're watching GM Genie, the channel that gives you the tools to turn your story into your player's dream RPG. Role-playing games are 90% description. Any new location, any new NPC, setting up an encounter, actions that take place in an encounter, all of these things only exist insofar as you describe them, and they are only as real as the quality of your description. Your players can't see the majesty of the hidden temple of the Dragon King if you're like, and so through the trees, you see this building's like, got like moss on it. It's like waterfalls coming down the sides. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I've been in games that were about like that. Because you can see this place. As you're writing your game, you see what these places look like. I mean, if you didn't see them in some kind of detail, if they didn't hold emotion for you, you wouldn't be running a game about them. But then when you get to the table, you realize that everybody has these, there's skulls in the way between your thoughts and their thoughts. And it hits you all at once. I don't know how to convey this the way that I saw it. And if you're not prepared with words to convey these ideas, then your game is not going to feel real to these players as the place where their characters supposedly live. Preparing your descriptions is no less important than preparing good encounters, preparing good plot hooks, preparing good NPCs, probably even more so. Because all those things are going to be locked up in your head until you describe them. So I'm going to share with you the tips that I use almost like a checklist to make sure that my descriptions are ready to go. First off, you want to move from outside impressions to inside impressions. Let's say your players are arriving at a new location, like the temple ruins I mentioned earlier. Don't just start with them at the temple doorway and here's what it looks like. Describe the hot, steamy jungle they traveled through for days and days, full of quicksand, poisonous animals, until finally, through the trees, they could see a clearing up ahead. Pushed through the last tangle of vines and found a sheer drop-off into this valley below. Wide open fields and waterfalls pouring into it. Way across on the other side, there's a structure. It stretches from the valley floor all the way up past their eye level. It's shaped like a steep pyramid. The walls are almost perpendicular. It's got gargantuan statues of snarling dragon heads coming out of the side of it. And the whole face of it is this ramshackle maze of balconies and doorways and stone crumbled by time, even as they're watching a silent avalanche of stone tumbles down the face and leaving it virtually unchanged. When they're finally standing in front of the 30-foot wide door covered in runes that has a puzzle that you've got planned for them, and you get the idea, where there's a sense of approaching this door and the dungeon rooms that are beyond it. You should be doing this with every location that your players go to. Every shop, every NPC they meet, big first impressions, small close-up impressions. And this is even true when you're starting a new campaign. Your initial description needs to be like a show credit sequence, or the establishing landscape shots of the movie, where you talk about some large-scale physical attributes of this game world. What does it look like when your players look up into the sky? What kind of continent does the adventure take place on? Then start to tighten your focus. What is this world like politically, even if your game isn't really about politics? What is it like historically? Is this a world of rich inherited tradition? Or is this a dark age where the past is a mystery? Then go even closer with what specific area is the adventure going to start out in? How is it different or the same as the rest of this world? Start talking about the day-to-day realities that impact the lives of these characters, or of the thousands of non-player characters who surround them. All of this is the landscape of your game, and if you start with the big details and move to the small details, you're helping build up a picture of where these player characters live. You're helping your players relate to them emotionally because they can see it. Now, once you've got your description written, you are not out of the woods. You still have to deliver it to your players, and that's where the techniques part of the video comes in. I personally always have the temptation to chicken out when it's time to give my description. It's vulnerable to share your ideas with other people anyway, and then once you're sharing them in flowery language you developed, then you feel like maybe it's corny, or maybe you're boring them. But I know for me, I can look back at scenes and encounters I've run that, in retrospect, I see that they're boring, and my players didn't throw Cheetos and balled up paper at me. Chances are, since your players have probably put up with some boring things from you once in a while, they'd be willing to put up with some slightly corny stuff from you now and again for the sake of having greater realism and detail in their game. Be confident. These people are here to spend their evening playing a game that you wrote. They want to see what you've got. Whatever you're describing, you want to represent as many sensory levels as you can. Sights, sounds, smells, feels. What does the place look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What do the air and the ground and the plants feel like? And what emotions surround the players? Be sure to include throwaway details. Things that you're never going to get to in your game. Things that are not relevant parts of any quest that your players are going on. Not only does that mask the solutions to player quests and puzzles, amongst other details, not only does it make the game world feel like it's bigger than these players' adventure, it also gives the players little potential rabbit trails to go off on. Then maybe one of your players later will connect what they're doing back to something you said, and that can grow and expand because you both thought it was interesting. Make eye contact. You can't butt your head up against someone else's head and shake the ideas into their brain. The best thing that you've got is direct eye contact from me to you as I'm describing this world that I can see with my mind's eye in words that let you see it in your mind's eye. It engages the player emotionally with you and therefore with what you are saying, and it encourages them to give creativity back into the game. Command silence while you are describing. Whether you're an alpha personality or a beta personality, this is a must. We all know the role-playing groups can be an unfocused, rowdy bunch, all talking at once, but do whatever you need to do to make sure your description stays uninterrupted. This is a role-playing game. You're going to have lots of opportunities to talk. Don't talk during the description, because then there's no game. If people are interrupting your description, they're disrespecting your time and that of everyone else at the table. So however harshly or kindly or publicly or privately you need to say that, you are the king of your table. And that means you've got to protect everybody's fun time. A lot of these techniques just come down to confidence. You are the GM. Don't be fearful about sharing your ideas. Don't be over modest. Don't skip details because you felt like people wanted to rush through it. So those are some of my tips and techniques for giving a good, robust, emotional description, and I would love to see some of yours. What are some of the best pictures you've ever painted for your group? What do you do to make sure your game worlds, locations, shops, shopkeepers are all exciting and engaging to your players? Leave all that in the comments below. I would love to learn from you guys. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and share it with your gaming friends. I'm GM Genie. I'll see you next time.